Thank you everybody for joining. And what a wonderful evening. We are also celebrating along with our annual day, the most important celebration of our chapter, that is 20th year celebration of our chapter. And this has become very special with the presence of Dr. Sanjeev Chopra being amidst all of us, and he's been signing the books. So how we formatted with the team is that we want to hear more from Sanjeev sir. What we will do is that we will keep it interactive also. About openings, about 5 to 10 minutes, sir will speak, and then the 2-3 questions our members have requested me to ask, I'll do that. And then we'll keep it open for everyone to interact and make best use of it. And also, I want to request, if you're buying the book which want to get autographed, get it now, because we have to let sir go, because there is another event happening at 6:30, 6:45. He has to be in Indiranagar, knowing Bangalore traffic. We cannot request him to stay. So the books are available there. So now, how do we start? I was just thinking, first thing, the moment we get to know sir is with us, that first thing any host will do is to look at his profile. And while I was looking at his profile, this is what I got. So now, for sure, I'm not going to read the entire thing. So the best profile I found is in its book, right? So because many of our YI member knows who he is, but we have Yuva students in midst of us, and then we have college faculties joined us from Garden City University and Shankara College of Optometry. For their benefit, I will take less than few seconds to read who sir is. Sir is Dr. Sanjeev Chopra. Is the former director of Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration in Mussoorie. So we all know what happens in Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy of Administration. The best of the best minds who are running our country are from there, and we really honored to have him from there. So he has got 36 years of experience being an IAS officer. Then you can imagine the amount of experience with the government. Yes, so after 36 years of experience of serving to our country, continues to serve, but he also held the Hubert and Humphrey Fellowship at Cornell, and the Robert S. McNamara Fellowship at World Bank, and at the position of Royal Astic Society, London, and the Lakshmi Mittal and Family South Asia Institute at Harvard. Now first, with this profile, what I should first be doing is to get his autograph on the book, which I bought it not today, before sir could arrive here. So I request sir to put his autograph. Thank you very much, sir. So make sure that if you have the copy of the book, get it autographed before sir leaves. Now, how do I start with this kind of experience? And it's just not that. I wanted to also tell you, he has done PhD in management, and there is economics. He has done a course in economics and law. Now, we have limited time, so I'll start with this. There's a very unique work done on India, but before that, I want to ask a question to all of you. How many of you saw India map 1 year back in the hall? 5 years back? 10 years ago? Our country map, okay, 2, 3, 4, 10 years ago, okay. Now, you may think, why is map important to us? That's what even I felt. Now, let's hear it from Dr. Sanjeev Chopra, why maps are important today, and what difference does it make knowing about maps? So I hand it over to you, sir. We'll start with that.
Thank you, Arvind. And it's a real pleasure to be here with you on your 20th anniversary. And may I grow from strength to strength. It's a great organization. I've been very closely associated with the Dehradun chapter of II. And last year, I think in the month of March, at the academy, we had many of you come there to do a course on governance and public policy. It was a very nice interaction, because we believe that ultimately the strength of a nation is how well the interactions happen. No nation can grow in silos. industry by itself, governance by itself, politics by itself, media by itself, academia by itself will not make a nation great. A nation becomes great when all of us work together and in harmony. And let me tell you, it's not difficult, but it's also not very easy. Just because we think that we should work in harmony and tomorrow everybody will start working in harmony, that doesn't happen. It has not happened in history, because history is always contested. History is always interesting. What I'll do today is to show you how the maps of India have changed from 1947 to 2019. You see, a map is a sovereign symbol. So unlike other things which can be printed by anyone, a rupee or a map may not be produced by anyone else. There's an authorized map of the country. Now, what you notice, and my research for the last 2 or 3 years has been on looking at how India has been shaping itself. You've heard of the ship of Theseus, the story about the ship of Theseus. How many of us have heard that story? All right, let me not embarrass anyone. The ship of Theseus is a story in which you see there is a ship, and over a period of time, every part of that ship gets changed. After some time, every part of the ship is changed, and is the ship the same ship, or is it a new ship? That's a philosophical question. But in the case of India, what you would notice is that none of the formations that you see on this map of 1947 exist today. You find a Mysore, but you don't see a Karnataka. You see a Hyderabad, but you don't see an Andhra Pradesh. The map of Punjab, as is shown here, is not the map of Punjab. The Bengal, as is shown here, is no longer Bengal. They've shown Rajputana here. So not one territory in this country has the same name or the same geographical formation as it was in 1947. So that's the first thing that we got to understand, that India, many countries changed their maps, and India is the one country where the internal boundaries have been changed more than 80 times. You see, and if countries do not change their internal boundaries, and if they do not incorporate the aspirations of people, then there are very different assertions. See, first of all, we got to understand that a preamble calls us we the people, right? And then it says India is a union of states. Now, when you say that India is a union of states, it does not say that India is United States. You know, the difference is that if India is United States, then the states get a privilege and an identity, which is just as the identity of India, as in the case of US of A. In the US of A, you cannot change the boundaries of Houston or the boundaries of Atlanta or the boundaries. You cannot change any boundaries because each of those is a constituent unit. Whereas in the case of India, India, that is Bharat, is the larger entity in which internal changes can take place. Because we have constituted not just India, but we are the ones who will also constitute Karnataka, we will constitute Punjab, we will constitute Haryana, we will do many things. So remember that in 1947, India inherited 9 provinces from the British Raj. In fact, there were 11 provinces, of which 2, that is Punjab and Bengal, were divided, and Sindh and the Northwest Frontier Province totally went over to Pakistan. So 9 states we inherited from the British, and we had 562 princely states. States which were liberal and educated and had good rulers, like in the case of Mysore. And you had some crazy rulers who spent more money on the pomp and show and the marriage of their dogs and bitches than on their families. So you had all kinds of Rajas and Maharajas, and 562 of them, all with different shapes and sizes, with some having 21-gun salutes, some having 19-gun salutes, and all the rest, you know. And some were, incidentally, some were called, all of them were called they were called His Highnesses, right? So, and the Nizam of Hyderabad was called His Exalted Highness, because they wanted to create little distinction everywhere. Now, just go on to the next map. Just go on to the next map. So what you find is that in 1950, by 1950, India, you can begin to recognize India slightly more, because the large swaths of territory which had been bracketed under princely states, gets to be organized as states of Part B. That is, they were called states under the Raj Pramukhs, like Mysore was. It was a state under the Raj Pramukh where we asked the erstwhile Maharaja to take over the state, and to become the Raj Pramukh there. Not an easy task, because getting 562 people to agree on a common instrument of accession, and the common instrument of accession only gave India the rights over defense, external affairs and communications. After that, we signed a merger agreement so that we gave privy purses to the rulers, and in lieu of that, we took over the civil, revenue, criminal jurisdiction of all these 562 states. This is a great tribute, and a great credit goes to Sardar Patel and his secretary, Mr. V.P. Menon. Now, I'd like to highlight the role of Mr. V.P. Menon, because Sardar Patel has got highlighted in recent times. I mean, you've had many biographies on Sardar Patel, you had a Statue of Unity there. But Mr. Menon was very significant because he did 2 or 3 very important things. First thing was that the Britishers wanted us to call ourselves the Dominion of Hindustan. The Britishers wanted that India should be broken up into the Dominion of Hindustan and the Dominion of Pakistan. Now, if we had accepted that, then it would have been 2 successor states to British India. But by opting to call ourselves India, that is Bharat, we became the successor state to British India, and therefore we did not have to negotiate any treaties, we did not have to renegotiate our entry into the Olympic Association or at that time it was before the UN came into being. There used to be something called the League of Nations, there was the World Health Organization. So there were already about 25, 30, including the World Meteorological Organization, right? So what would have happened is that if we had called ourselves the Republic of Hindustan, then India as an entity may have gone. But India as an entity is also quite an ancient entity, right? So it's something that we did to ourselves. So by 1950, all these princely states had been integrated into either the Union of India or into the neighboring state, or they made a union of states, or if there were large states like Mysore, Jammu Kashmir, Hyderabad, they were allowed to retain their earlier existence. So that is the story of India till 1950. Then by 1950, although at the time of independence, there was a lot of linguistic fervor in the country. And remember that the Britishers were ruling us through the English language, but the Congress always felt that the communication has to be in the language of the people, and therefore the Congress had decided from 1918 to have the Sindh Congress, the Karnataka Congress, the Kannada Congress, the Bengal Congress, the Punjabi Congress. So Congress had decided that India must be organized on linguistic lines, because you cannot have a democratic polity unless you speak the language of the people. But immediately after independence, the feeling was that just because of, you had such a major repercussion on account of the partition, that there was a problem, and it was decided to postpone the linguistic reorganization of states. But from 1952 itself, there were agitations in Andhra, so that led to the settlement of creation of Andhra state, which led to the creation of the States Reorganization Committee, and in between you had the first Hindi map of India come up in 1952. Let's move on to the next map, sir, which is the first Hindi map of India. Now what I want to show you in this map is that for the first time, the word China or China appears on the map of India. Before that, the Britishers never used the word China on the map of India. They always used the word Tibet, or they called it undefined territory. Now, interestingly, what happened was that, a map, therefore, not only tells you about what you think about yourself, your map also tells you what you think about the others. Because the map that we show, the Jammu Kashmir that we show on our map, is different from the map which Pakistan shows, and is different what international organizations show about our map. So a map is a symbol of a sovereign territory. A territory and a map have a very close connection. I mean, if you do not map your territory, that territory is undefined. And therefore, each and every piece of territory has to be very clearly defined. And you not only define yourself, you also define your neighbor. Right? So this is the importance of the map. So let's move on, and because I'll just like to tell you a few more interesting things about the map. So, here you again find Tibet and China. But by 1956, Tibet had disappeared from the map of India, because we stopped recognizing Tibet and we were only focusing on China. That led to its own set of issues. But by 1956, the country became more recognized because the 4 southern states, I mean, we got 4 states on the basis of language. So Mysore got Kannada language, then Tamil, and all these things were there. So what is happening is that over a period of time, as people asserted their rights to have a linguistic or an ethnic community, as a country, after a little bit of agitation, India accepted that and we were able to reorganize ourselves. Now I say this because in contrast, what happened in Pakistan was that on the 21st of February 1948, Mr. Jinnah made a speech at Dhaka University in English in which he said that Urdu will be the sole official language of Pakistan. Now that is when the foundation of Bangladesh actually took place on 21st of February 1948. And that is also the day which is now celebrated as the International Mother Language Day, because that day 18 young Bengalis had to lose their life wanting Bengali to be another official language of Pakistan, because we must not forget that Bengalis were 55% of Pakistan at that time. So East Bengal always had more people than West Pakistan, but the polity of Pakistan was controlled by Karachi and Lahore, and therefore, because the Punjabis and the Ashrafs did not want to give power to those who they felt were the imbecile Bengalis, that they were using very pejorative terms for them. So that's how, so what happens, the larger point that I'm trying to make is that nations which are in a position to absorb internal conflict, absorb dissension, absorb diversity, they do much better. 1956, 4 southern states came up. Then in 1960, Maharashtra and Gujarat came up. In 1961, Goa was liberated. So what happens is that every time the map or the name of a state changes, you know, the whole map has to change. And that is how the Survey of India prints maps. Every time there is a change in the name or there is a change in status. For example, Mysore had become Mysore as a Kannada-speaking state in 1956. But Karnataka as a name came up only in 1973. Therefore, when 1973, when Mysore became Karnataka, a new political map of the country would be issued, right? So in 1961, when Goa gets liberated, next time when Goa is there, because before that, just below Goa, it was written Portuguese territory. So after 1961, the new map that came up was, it did not have Portugal written on the map of India. The other important thing which I want to share with you, and I'll close in the next 5 or 6 minutes because I'd like to open it up for questions. 1963, Nagaland was made. Now I want to tell you about things which are not normally well known. Why is the creation of Nagaland important? The creation of Nagaland is important because there was a very strong insurgency in Nagaland which started with Mr. Fizo wanting a separate nation for the Nagas. Separate nation for the Nagas. But over a period of time, many Nagas believed and accepted the fact that, look, it's a very unrealistic proposition because Nagas are there not just in India, but there are Nagas in Myanmar, there were Nagas in Nagaland, there were Nagas in Assam, there were Nagas in the frontier. So they said, all right, let's settle for a Nagaland. Therefore, one part of the northeastern frontier province, some parts of Assam were brought together into Nagaland. And in 1963, Nagaland was created. Having said that, let me tell you that still there are tribes of Nagaland which live in Manipur. And that is why there is a conflict there. There are some conflicts which cannot be resolved. And we got to accept that some conflicts cannot be resolved. But the creation of Nagaland made it very clear that you can have a state which may never be financially viable or administratively strong, or can exist without the support of the government of India. Before that, the feeling in the States Reorganization Commission was that a border state must be strong enough to protect the international borders, because before 1965, we did not have the BSF, and therefore it was important that the borders are guarded by the state armed polices, and in order to have a strong state armed police, it was felt that a state must be strong enough, it must have the wherewithal to do this. 65, 66, Punjab, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Chandigarh, These were created. In 71, you had Himachal that was created. Then you had the UTs of the northeast, you know, Meghalaya, Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh, Mizoram. They came up first as union territories, and then gradually they became states over a period of time. There's one state, you know, if you read if you read the first few articles of the Constitution, India's territory has been defined. And therefore, India cannot cede an inch of the territory. India cannot also take any more territory other than what has been written down in our schedule. So in 1975, Sikkim wanted to be a part of India. A lot of people here feel that India just, a lot of people, that the logic at that time was that India has just, taken over Sikkim. But the fact is that in Sikkim, what had happened was that from around the year 1870, a lot of Nepalese had moved into Sikkim to help the lamas till the land around their monasteries. And over a period, because lamas were monastic and were more inclined to, just do the prayer bells, their population did not grow, and the Nepali population grew. And by 1947, there was 60% population of Sikkim was actually Nepalese, and therefore they wanted to be part of India because they felt that they were better off in India than they were in Chogyal, Sikkim, because there they got only 20 seats, 20 for Bhutias, 20 for Lepchas, and 20 for the Nepalese. So therefore, they wanted to be part of India. Remember, you cannot get a territory in your country unless the people are interested. So people become far more important than territory. So that's a very important lesson of history that we have. Then, of course, as we go on, we find that in 78, Mr. Lal Denga, who was a rebel who has been fighting against the country, he became the chief minister of Mizoram. So I point these things out that as a country, we've been able to accommodate dissent. As a country, we've been able to accommodate and talk to anyone and everyone. So the person who is arrested under the NSA, a person who is arrested under the POSCO, can become the chief minister, can become a minister, can rise to any position, because we accept the fact that in a democracy, there shall be difference of opinion, and these differences of opinions have to be handled carefully, and we can sort of sort these things out. Okay. Then you find that, till about the 1980s or 1990s, there was a reluctance in, by this time, everybody was very clear that all right, if somebody wants a state of his or her own, without disturbing the larger contours of the nation, we should have it, because development requires a direct connect with the people. And that's how there was a bipartisan consensus when the three states of Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh and Uttarakhand were made. They were called Uttaranchal at that time, it was called Uttaranchal. But the important thing to realize, which I want to share with you, is that, we've had 404 constitutional amendments till date. We have had 104 constitutional amendments till date, from 1950, 26 January 1950 to now. And in most of them, 80% of them, the Congress and the BJP and the Communists have voted together. So contrary to the general impression that we have, that there's a lot of infighting amongst our political class, the fact is that when it comes to important national issues, most political parties tend to adopt the same line. The same thing happened in the 103rd Constitutional Amendment. The same is happening in the 104th Constitutional Amendment. But for a few amendments, in most cases, the political parties have come together even on issues which we normally think listed. Take the case of the 42nd Constitutional Amendment. The 42nd Constitutional Amendment was actually a very controversial amendment, because that was done during the emergency, was done when half the members of the opposition were confined. When the Janata Party fought elections, they said that we will rescind everything which the 42nd Amendment had done during emergency. But remember that a lot of things which were done in the 42nd Amendment, including the word socialist and secular, that remains. And another word had been added in the preamble, that was integrity. Before that, the preamble of Dr. Ambedkar only said sovereign democratic republic. And it said unity of India. Now I'll take a minute and tell you why the word integrity was added. You see, the Dravidian movement in this country, which was very strong in Tamil Nadu or Madras, but had its adherents in Karnataka and Andhra and Kerala and French Puducherry, they were, till the 1956 SRC, fairly strong. I mean, the Dravidian movement was fairly strong. And they also wanted, they also thought, that we could perhaps, have a separate thing of this sort. So after 1962, after when the Chinese war was there, the oath to the constitution, I mean, when you take an oath as an MP, when you take the oath as the Prime Minister, when you take the oath as a Chief Minister, that oath was amended to include the word integrity, unity and integrity. So when Mr. Annadurai took that oath of unity and integrity, he bound himself and all Dravidian parties to accepting the integrity of the country. And one of the positive fallouts of the 1962 war was that DMK forever and forever gave up the whole idea of a separate Dravidistan. Till that time, the idea was prevalent. But 1962, when the aggression with China took place, when China attacked India, he said that this is the time when all India must come together. I am a proud Dravidian, you can be a proud Punjabi, you can be a proud Gujarati, but we are all very strong Indians. So that is the how over a period of time, gradually with accepting things, conceding some points, accepting some points, we made the country stronger. So 2000, you had these 3 states come up, 2014, you had Telangana, and in 2019, we've had Jammu Kashmir as a state into 2 union territories of Ladakh and of Jammu Kashmir. Now I want to tell you about Ladakh before I close and open the floor for questions. Ladakh Buddhist Association always wanted to be out of Kashmir. They wanted a separate entity, rather they wanted that culturally and ethnically and linguistically, Ladakh is closer to the Lahaul-Spiti area of Himachal Pradesh and the Tehri Garhwal and the Pauri Garhwal areas of Uttarakhand. At that point of time, Lahaul-Spiti was a part of Punjab hill states. So Ladakh Buddhist Association wanted that in the new division of the country, in the new reorganization of the country, there should be a strong Himalayan state, which would have then included Ladakh and Lahaul-Spiti and the Garhwal areas of Uttarakhand, which if you can look at, would have given a very different dimension to this country. Can you go back to the last map that we have? In the last map you will find that we showing Ladakh and Jammu Kashmir as the last, very last, because we couldn't follow a sequence because the time was short, but just go back to the very last map in the series.
Before they get into the map, I just wanted to
sure.
be how grateful to you about this work, and this will give you a very interesting perspective of looking at our own country. I'll give you a live example. I come from a place called Ooty, and I never knew that Ooty was the summer capital of Madras state.
Yeah.
I never knew this. I got excited, went to my father and asked him that, did you know Ooty was a summer capital of Madras state? He said, I don't know. I mean, he's 64. Imagine the depth of research done to educate us about our own country. So we really congratulate you for that.
I must also tell you that Dr. Ambedkar had suggested that Hyderabad should be the winter capital of the country. He had suggested that if you have Hyderabad as the winter capital of this country, part of the north-south divide would go. I'll tell you another thing. Dr. Ambedkar advocated Sanskrit as the national language of the country. He felt that, Sanskrit is the language which will be difficult. I mean, it's not a sport, it will be difficult, but it will be universally easy or universally difficult. And the Hindi hegemony that is there, or that the South is rather, So let me do one thing. Let me read you the conclusions of my book, because I know, you see, very few people will go beyond the prologue. And the time is very limited. So I would suggest that if you have less time, then read the prologue and the epilogue. Because reading 280 pages is tough, I know that. And you also want to give the impression that you've read the book. Therefore, if you want to give the impression that you've read the book, Then you read the prologue, you read chapter 1 and you read epilogue, which will be about 47, 48 interesting pages. And you can pass around and say that, you have a mastery and a grip over the situation. We need to give these tips because I must tell you, one day, after a rather nice presentation by one of our officers, by a group of officers, the IS officers in the academy, I said, I'm very impressed, very good. So what methodology? So obviously, other groups were getting very upset at the praise which was being given to them. So Piche they said, cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste. So I don't want that to happen. So okay, I'm reading you my conclusions. First and foremost is the fact that the notion of identity is fluid. Sometimes we identify ourselves as Kannadigas, sometimes we identify ourselves as Punjabis, sometimes we like to identify ourselves as Hindus, sometimes, so notion of identity is very fluid. And yet you cannot, it's fluid, but being fluid doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So fluid is fluid. So fluid has to be understood as fluid. Fluid is not gas. So it's not gas. It's not solid, but it is fluid, which means that it is malleable. Right? So it means that it will continue to negotiate and renegotiate with itself. Second, language usually unites people. But script can be a bone of contention. It's rather sad that all of Malaysia and Indonesia have lost their script. It's rather sad that they have lost. And when you lose a script, you not only lose a script, with a script you lose your culture, you lose your language, you lose your tradition. And it is so unfortunate that under the influence of imperialism, Indonesia and Malaysia have completely lost their original script. It's so unfortunate. I mention this because there were people, you mentioned here that, your father has spent time there. But the loss of script in Malaysia and Indonesia is something I feel rather sad about. There's a considerable difference in the way national political parties look at things and the way regional political parties look at things. Third, there's a difference in the way English press interprets news. Within the English press, what the Business Standard and Economic Times thinks, and what Times of India thinks, and what Times of India doesn't think actually, because it's just, but anyway, it's a good paper for advertisements. I must, at the expense of, I must tell you that I started my career in the Times of India, but when that time it was a thinking paper, because R.K. Lakshman used to put his cartoons in, so that's what made it a thinking paper. But when Times of India was setting up an edition either in Hyderabad or Bangalore, I forget which city, to compete with Deccan. Deccan Herald has an edition in Hyderabad also? Hyderabad also. Karnataka, and then they have it in Hyderabad, okay, Bangalore. So I remember coming to the Bangalore airport when Times of India just introduced its invitation edition and called it Rupee 1, and Deccan Herald was still at Rupees 3 or something. So I remember very nice, one of the best ads I've seen is, so there's Deccan Herald, and so it says, newspaper, Deccan Herald, paper, Rupee 1, the choice is yours. So I thought it was a very nice advertisement, rather bad. I hope there's nobody from Times of India who's covering it, but anyway. You see, the other thing is that the opposition to an idea can come from anywhere. In 1954, the chief ministers of Bengal and Bihar, they thought that why not have Bengal and Bihar as a composite state. And the idea was welcomed by the English press, it was welcomed by the Congress High Command, it was welcomed by the Prime Minister. Everybody felt it's a good idea, why not have larger states? It will also resolve the issues of language. But it was opposed by the Communist Party of India, it was opposed by the UP Congress, it was opposed by the regional press. So these are all things which keep on happening. Okay, the last point which I want to share with you is, second last point. You see, you celebrated 20 years, and you think 20 years is a long time. I'm 60, so I think 60 is a long time. But actually in the history of a nation, 60 years is nothing. Nations have to count their lives in centuries. But beyond that, civilizations have to count their life in millennia. Therefore, whenever we look at history, we've got to have the sense of perspective that, 5 years, 4 years, 3 years, a leader today and not being a leader tomorrow. is when you look at history in the long durée, when you look at history in the long range, then you remember that India has always been a country which has celebrated diversity, a country which has accepted that within the overall canvas or the overall map of Bharat, stroke Mahabharat, stroke Jambudweep, there will be nations, there will be armies. Let's not use the word nation, but let's say that there would be kingdoms, and these kingdoms would sometimes collaborate, sometimes fight with each other, sometimes come together. Because remember, the first shlok in the Bhagavad Gita, it starts with Dhritarashtra asking Sanjaya, Sanjaya, please tell me, which are the armies on the side of the Pandavas and which are the armies on the side of the Kauravas? They were all armies from within the subcontinent of India or the larger area of Bharat. And let me also tell you, this Bharat and Jambudweep included Lakshadweep because that was the light of 1,000 suns. This Lakshadweep and that included the Digo Garcia or the Chagos Islands and all that. So in our conception, you know, you have a civilizational India. You have the larger Mahabharat, and then you have the nation state of India. So all three are connected, all three are related, and all three are distinct. And this nation state of India, which derives itself from the civilizational Bharat, will continue to grow and prosper if we respect diversity, if we respect everything that all of us have with each other. I'm very grateful to you to having given me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev sir. We are opening the floor for the questions. So what request is that we'll limit one question to each individual. Let's not have follow-up questions and no statements, but considering the time available. Just ask the direct question. We'll get the answer so that everybody gets the thing. Kindly introduce yourself before asking the question. While the mic is going there, there's one thing which really made me think a lot after reading the book is that you spoke about, very beautifully shown the map, there was 562 princely states in India. In a matter of 2 years to 3 years, the entire thing changed. That time there was no WhatsApp, there is no email, right? How did this journey happen? What would you like to tell the...
You see, there was a new ministry was created. It was called the Ministry of States. The Ministry of States was under Sardar Patel. And as I told you, Mr. Menon was his secretary. So they drafted a common instrument of accession. And this instrument of accession was sent across the country through telegram, through wire, through various other things. And they were all told to sign up. And this process had started. You see, the interim government had started from July of 1946. Because by 1946, the Indian Independence Act, I mean, it was very clear that the British have to hand over power. And therefore, the interim government had been sworn in. With Sardar Patel as the interim home member. So from July 1946, the process of drafting the instrument of accession, sending it across to all the states, that had started. And it was very clear that, you know, you have to you have to sign the, so only 2 states did not do it. 3 states did not do it. One was Jammu Kashmir, second was Hyderabad, and third was Junagadh. So these 3 states did not agree to sign the instrument of accession, wanted to delay it for some time. That is why, as far as Junagadh is concerned, he just left the state and went over to Pakistan. In the case of Jammu Kashmir, the instrument of accession was signed on the 26th of October 1947. And in the case of Hyderabad, our troops had to go in, and it's only then that the Nizam agreed to do it sometime in 1948. So 559 states had signed the instrument of accession. 3 did it later, then followed up by the merger agreements.
It itself is incredible. Yeah, so if
yes,
Bhavin wants to go first, you have the mic. But I think Bhavin mic is coming.
Thank you. Sir, the Chinese are taking this, the term, the map is not the territory, very seriously. And Russians are doing it as well. Your thoughts on that? I know it's a little on the geopolitics side, but I think it touches, you know, your subject as well. So,
you see, historians talk about the past. Historians should not talk about contemporary issues or about the future. That is not my remit. But having said that, you know, what had the initial impression was that the Russian army is so strong. I mean, when the war started, nobody, including me, thought that it will be a matter beyond 2-3 weeks That is what we thought, right? But international conflicts have shown that not only in the case of Russia in Ukraine, look at America in Afghanistan, look at America in Vietnam. It is very difficult, very, very difficult for a foreign element to change, because when the patriotism is evoked, when driven to a wall, nations fight back, and that's what Ukraine is doing. Otherwise, in terms of military might, and military strength, it would have been very difficult for Ukraine to stand up to the Russian challenge. Nobody thought that Russia would have such a tough time, and Russia has had to make several retreats. It is true that in the case of Ukraine, there is a lot of NATO influence, there's a lot of American influence, and because it's contemporary, because we still don't have all the facts in place, I will not hazard a guess here.
Yusuf had a question. Here's the mic.
Oh, good evening, Dr. Chopra. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your thoughts with us. My name is Yusuf, and I have a question related to identity. So when you were going through your conclusions, the first conclusion you talked about was that identity is fluid, right? It keeps changing, just like how maps keep changing. And so the question I have is, as an individual, how strongly should I hold on to my identity? Or should I actually not hold strongly to it? Because if I'm very rigid with my identity, I might become very narrow-minded or what, right? Should it be...
Okay,
yeah.
let me put it like this, that in the 21st century world that we are living in, it is not possible to have a singular identity. We will have multiple identities, you see, because let's look at it about 100 years ago, when my family was in one particular district or one particular area, the interaction with the outside world was very, very limited. So you could identify and say, I'm a Punjabi Khatri. I'm a Punjabi Khatri from Hafzabad, which is incidentally now in Pakistan. But because the interaction with the outside world was limited. Now today that your interaction, whether you like it or not, your passport will say you are an Indian. Your passport will also reflect your religion. Your passport will also reflect your state. So 3 identities are built in. I mean, 3 identities are 3 official identities most Indians will have. I'm a Punjabi. What does my passport say? My passport will say that I'm an Indian. My passport will also give my domicile, will give my place of birth. So my place of birth and my title will continue to be as it is. And my religion is also given. So these 3 identities are given. In addition to that, there can be multiple identities. Right? India is a country, unlike and today most countries in the world are multi-ethnic, multilingual. Very few countries are there which do not recognize the identity, and then it creates a problem. Pakistan, for example, does not recognize Punjabis and Sindhis and Baluchis officially. Officially they don't, and yet they are there. I mean, the identity of a Punjabi in Pakistan, or the identity of a Sindhi in Pakistan, or the identity of a Baloch in Pakistan is very much there. You recognize it or you do not recognize it. My point is that if you recognize it and celebrate it, it is much better than putting it in the closet. So be open about it. We celebrate your identity. You cannot wish it away. Your identity is something, your language is something, your country is something that you cannot wish away. So why not celebrate it, and why not accept it, and why not, just move with it. That's the way I would like to answer you.
It was very interesting to know the history of the maps and how India got its identity. But I wanted to know that when we were talking about accession of the princely states, don't you think it was too sudden? Because few states, the rulers were doing great job at their development. And once it was assessed, their biographies say that, the downfall began. Like in Rajasthan or Gujarat, when the power went on to the center, the things started falling. So what do you think, should there have been some power given to the kings there so people connected with them? The connection was lost immediately. So, and that's why we still have that problems in our country.
You see, the jury is out on this. The jury is out on this. The fact is that from 1935, it was very clear that independence will happen. So after 1935 Act, most of the Rajas knew that independence is on the anvil. Now, of the 562 states, the states which were doing well can be counted on the fingertips. You are very fortunate to come from Mysore, where Maharaja was very, very good. Wadiyar 4 is in fact one of the most, Mysore got its legislative assembly in the year 1882. Mysore got its reservations by the early part of the Mysore had a great tradition, you know. So you've had ICS officers being the prime ministers here. You've had Velodi as the prime. You've had Viswesvaraya as the prime minister, as the Diwan here. So, but how many Mysores were there in the country? How many Barodas were there in the country? And also we must not forget that these are all very individual-centered. Baroda had a great king and then they had a crazy king. So, you know, the whole thing was based on one individual. So, it is true that when we talk about an enlightened kingdom, in the case of Mysuru it was there, but it was not true in the rest of the country. In the rest of the country, you find great contrast. I mean, look at the contrast between Cochin and Trivandrum, for instance. You know, so a lot of Maharajas were quite outdated in their approach. Some of this, so you cannot make a blanket statement for 562 states. But the fact is that in most states, the adult franchise wasn't there. Wherever and when India decided to accept the principle of adult franchise, power had to shift. Power had to shift from the feudal elite, from the Rajas and Maharajas. It had to become a more democratic polity. It was the writing on the wall. And let me also mention here that the majority view at that point of time in the country was in favor of land reforms, was in favor of equality, was in favor of, you know, of greater, what should we say, greater distribution of wealth and of equality. So that was the movement at that time.
Yes, Bharat.
Good evening. Thank you. Very, very interesting session, enlightening us, and so nice to know that we should not forget about history. My question was, do you see our states more realignment in our country going forward?
Yes.
And it will.
Certainly.
And do you think it will be more difficult, more culturally, politically, more difficult than it has been there in the past when we have had to do this over the years?
See, what you see, you know, you're aware that delimitation in this country has not taken place from 1971. It's a very sensitive subject. It's a hot potato. Because after the next delimitation, it is for sure that unless UP is reorganized into 3 or 4 states, we will have states in the country which will have more than 100 MPs. And then there will be states in the country which will have fewer MPs. I mean, Lakshadweep and all, 1 MP, that's fine. But states like Karnataka, West Bengal, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, all states which have done well and which are contributing more to the country, they may have fewer seats in the parliament. That's a very important question. Now, my assessment on this situation and my recommendation, I mean, although historians should not do any recommendation, is that the Assembly of UP has already resolved that UP should be reorganized into 4 states. Now, if that happens, that will, to a large extent, make things more easy, because then Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, all these places will take, you know, there is another state which also has 20, 30 MPs, which has 40 MPs. But if the gap becomes very large, if one state gets 100 MPs and the next state has only 40 MPs, then for all times to come, UP gets to be in this control of the central government, which a lot of states will resent, which not only the southern states, but even Gujarat will resent, even Bengal will resent, Maharashtra will resent, because nobody, ultimately politics is about power, right? And power has to be equally, or if not, power will never be equally divided. Power has to be equitably decided. I mean, you know, so there's a difference between being equal and being equitable. So we must keep these 2 words in mind always. Equal is never possible. It is never possible to be equal. But equitable, with greater equity, yes. So that is what I think will be both a challenge and a great opportunity for us to reorganize ourselves. You know, a Telangana example is very interesting because it shows that a state with 1 language can also have 2 states, right? So you can have 2 states in Bengal, you can have, 2 Bengali-speaking states. So the monopoly of Hindi, Telangana is very important because it shows that the monopoly of Hindi, of being the only language which has many states having that as the common language, that has broken with the formation of Telangana from Andhra Pradesh. A very important political moment in our country.
Yes, I just have a follow-up question to what Bharat had asked. You had mentioned very nicely about when we had the post-independence, we had very strong leaders in our country, like Mahatma Gandhi was there, and Ambedkar and Nehru, Sardar. And you defined it very beautifully in the book, what was the purpose behind, the thought process behind each of the leader. But they all came together and agreed on the linguistic-based reorganization. Now, if this reorganization has to happen, you touched about the MP strength and the representation. But we would have been better off if we went ahead with a natural resource based and the population based at that time. And if you were given a reorganizing responsibility now, what would you look at this point of time?
You see, what happens is that the nature of resources change. The nature of resources change. I mean, today, a state is great if it has more educational institutions. I mean, gone are the days when water was the determining factor. You know, gone are the days when, you see, some of the states in our country which have the best natural resources are also the most backward states in the country. So it is not the natural resource which makes a difference. So that aspect is gone now. I mean, look at Sikkim. I mean, Sikkim is an example of a state which has invested in organic agriculture and education. I mean, 50 years ago, if somebody had said that you can become a state with just organic agriculture and education, I mean, it would have gone. I mean, why is Bangalore doing so well? Why are Pune doing so well? Why are places with education doing so well? Because the whole nature of resources change. So I think, I mean, I cannot predict the future, but I'd certainly see a realignment of states in this country. And I must tell you that 50 years from now, it does appear that the politicians at that time were, there was a great acrimony in the amongst the political class at that time. If you see the debates at the time of the first amendment to the constitution, Mr. Nehru was being torn apart by Mr. Pilu Modi and by many other people. What are you talking about? Because and let me tell you that, you see, all politicians at all points of time have a public persona in which they fight and which they have to agitate, in which they have to do many things. But they also work together on most things. As I told you, in the 104 amendments that we've had, at least in 88, 89 of them, there has been a uniform consensus and people have sort of agreed on most things. So there is one thing which the politician has to remember, that the politician has to address multiple audiences at the same time. Annadurai was a fine example of that. When Annadurai was arguing about English being an associate language for India, the term that he used was, down with Hindi, long live India.
Okay.
So, you are addressing, because he was addressing a constituency in his state, he was also addressing a constituency outside the state. So, how you communicate, how you speak, what you speak, that's what intelligent political leadership does.
Great insights, especially for YI, we being youngsters. We have Dr. Kaushik having a question. Can somebody pass on the mic to Dr. And we will have, after Dr. Kaushik's question, we will have chance for one final question and then we have to conclude the session. I request, if you want anybody to get an autograph, keep the book ready. So, sir will have to leave by another 5 minutes or so. Dr.
So thank you so much. Wonderful to hear you again after Labasna. Like you spoke of reorganization within India, will we see the way the map is reorganized around India in terms of, will we see a Tibet reappear on our India maps? Why aren't we using that as a soft tool?
A very good question, and I have no immediate answer to that. But, the fact is that the way China is shaping up, or the way China, I mean, it's a matter of time, because, as I said, Tibet, Dalai Lama walked out of Tibet in 1959. For about 300 years, Tibet was a quasi-independent kingdom within the overall umbrella of the Chinese. The nature of sovereignty also changes. So we do not know what is going to happen, but certainly, you see, if Taiwan goes out of China, if Taiwan goes out of, I mean, if the big question before Tibet, because internationally it's very difficult to, for foreign nations to intervene in Tibet. But insofar as Taiwan and Formosa is concerned, because it is an island, because it is part of the Quad, because it is very close to the Straits of Malacca, and it has already been shown when Pelosi went there that the US means business when it comes to Taiwan. So if Taiwan remains its independent, a lot will depend on what happens to Taiwan. If Taiwan can become independent, if Taiwan gets, you see, US also plays its cards very well. US has not gone ahead and recognized Taiwan, right? US has not gone ahead and, so US is irking China. US has not gone ahead. So there are multiple factors and multiple factors and multiple factors. And I have not read too much on this subject, so I will not hazard a guess, except to say that there is nothing permanent. except to say that there's nothing permanent. If China's, if the present leadership of China cannot hold China together, then there'll be newer realignments. Will certainly happen.
Is there any question? Yeah. Okay, before anybody asks, I'll take the liberty of asking the final question. As we are celebrating our 20th year of Young Indians, and we are all youth in our country, and the purpose of our organization is to build responsible youth leadership. And you've been in the administrative services for 36 years, and still we feel like you're part of our Young Indian team.
Oh,
right?
thank you.
One or two, three messages for we young Indians. And today, the way the world is, India is, you wanted to communicate it to us that these are three qualities, are the important characters we need to carry to be very, very responsible leaders for our country and to the world.
So I think the first thing is that we got to respect each other. You know, one of the things that in the value of words which we curate, we have a point which we say, appreciate excellence in others. One of our problems or one of our issues is that we are all very happy appreciating what we have done. The moment we start appreciating excellence in others, excellence in what other institutions are doing, and learning from anywhere in the world where excellence is happening, I think that is number one point that I would certainly suggest to young Indians. The second is the ability to listen, because listening is an art which is fast disappearing in the age of WhatsApp. So we got to listen. And the third is the ability to communicate in a manner which is not adversarial. I should be able to convey my point of view to you without annoying you. And there is a way in which it can be done. And I'll tell you one of the most interesting, one of the most effective communication that I've had with the Vice Chancellor of one university. You see, at the end of 2-year training, one of my officer trainees, she wrote to, she's from a university, and she said everything is the same, and the curfew timing for boys and girls is still different in my university. And I wanted to raise this matter with the Vice Chancellor, and the Vice Chancellor said nothing doing. I mean, they have to be different curfew timings. So I thought, you know, how does one communicate this to the Vice Chancellor in a manner which will be effective and yet not cause offense to him? So I wrote to him saying that, dear Mr. Vice Chancellor, I'm very glad that you have taken a lot of concern about security of girls on your campus. I'm a bit concerned that the same care has not been extended to the boys of your campus. Therefore, I would suggest that in the interest of their safety, similar provisions, similar concern should be extended to the boys of the campus as well. So after this letter, the curfew timings for both were equalized. So I think, you know, so we have to plan things in a manner that the other person is not upset with you. So that's what we should try.
Amazing. It's a great note to conclude this wonderful session, and huge round of applause to Dr. Sanjeev Chopra. And he continues.